Today, I am sitting down with Sara Griffin from Edge Clinical. Edge Clinical offers in-depth courses for dietitians in nutrition support, so EN and TPN specifically. And Sara reached out to us a little while ago because she was like, you know what? I support dietitians so deeply in the area of nutrition support, but I want to be able to refer them out when they're looking to build expertise in other topics. So let's say things like digestive health, hormone health, women's health, etc. So that's how our awesome partnership came to be. And then for those that are looking to build a deeper focus and specialization in nutrition support, we are happy to pass them along to Sara in return. Today, Sara and I talk about where the idea for Edge Clinical came from and some of the challenges and successes in creating and selling online courses for dietitians specifically. So with that, let's get into the episode. Okay, Sara, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so happy to chat with you today and to talk to you a little bit about your business and how you got started, and particularly because your business is more so in the area of serving other dietitians, which is really cool. So excited to dive into that. So do you want to just tell us a little bit more about, first of all, what you do? What is your business? And then I'd love to hear a bit more about the backstory of how you actually got started.
Absolutely. So I own Edge Nutrition. It's a nutrition support curriculum company, essentially. So what I do is I build virtual nutrition support courses for current and future dietitians. And this was sort of a brainchild that I had early on in my career when I became a dietitian. There was a big gap between when I took my last M&T course in undergrad and when I started my clinical rotation. It was actually probably three and a half years gap, and I was not prepared for my clinical rotations at all. My undergrad program focused more on community and food service, and so it was pretty weak in clinical, which I knew going in. And I thought, that's fine. I'm not going to be a clinical dietitian anyway. And lo and behold, my first job I got as a clinical dietitian, and I was really underprepared, especially in nutrition support. And so I started taking interns, which was part of my job. And as a brand new dietitian, that felt very intimidating. But a lot of my interns were asking me questions about nutrition support for themselves. And I was just searching through resources, like, where do I point them? What do I tell them to read? Is there a course they can do or a program they can take to kind of get their skills up? And I didn't find anything really that would work. So I started putting together my own course, and it was intentionally supposed to be for the facility that I worked at, for those interns, kind of a course for them to run through. And pretty quickly realized that it was taking a lot of my time and this could be a good business opportunity. So fast forward maybe 4 years and I finished my course and launched it in 2020 and have been selling it ever since.
Wow, so cool. So so fast forward to now. So you're still working full-time as a clinical dietitian. Is that correct?
I work part-time. So I technically work, PRN as a clinical RD, and I teach as well.
Oh, very cool. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so your business is sort of your side hustle.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. Love that. So, okay. So let's go back to, because I'm so interested to just hear your experience around online courses. And I love that because we were talking about this before, there's so much interest in the dietitian world about like, what is really involved in creating an online course? So going back to that beginning stage, what were some of the first steps that you took? Like, how did you actually know how to create an online course?
Great question. YouTube is very helpful. I initially came into this thinking, I want to make my startup costs as low as possible, which in retrospect probably isn't the wisest thing. I just had a lot of time on my hands, so I was able to invest time in it. And I thought, I was just very nervous to kind of invest my own money in something that I wasn't sure if it was going to go or not. So I did a lot of DIY at the very beginning. I didn't have the money to hire out a lot of my work. So I had somebody build a website for me just to show and kind of show me like how you edit things on your own website. And I used LearnDash inside of WordPress. And LearnDash is just a course product, like a plugin on WordPress. And I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and those things are pretty user friendly. So once you get the course shell built and all the complicated parts done. You can build your course pretty simply on your own. So I've had to contract out some of the more complicated bits of my website, but most of it I've done on my own.
Very cool. Oh, interesting to hear. I didn't realize you were on WordPress and you use LearnDash. We actually do the same
Mhm.
thing, but I know a lot of
Hmm.
dietitians will use something like Teachable or Thinkific or
Yeah,
Kajabi. Is there a reason why you didn't explore those routes?
I didn't know anything. So my web
Gotcha.
guy was like, WordPress, I do WordPress, I code on WordPress, LearnDash is great, and he just built it that way. So I'm happy with it.
Oh, very cool. Okay, that's awesome. So how did you know what to cover and how to actually
Mm,
build out the course shell as you're talking about? I think that that's a big barrier for people
mhm.
is understanding or knowing like what do I cover? How much is too much? How much is too little? What did that process look like for you?
Yeah, good question. There were some other materials. I will say I didn't see any other courses when I was building my course, like no direct competition, but Aspen had some other resources, more like workbook type things. So I took a look at some of those just to see what other people were doing. And I created a course outline that felt doable, wasn't just copying other people's, but I sort of used other resources to see what exists already, what makes sense to people already. And I asked my interns. So a lot of it was, I was, working in clinical. A lot of these questions I had when I was an intern. So I kind of thought back to what did I want to know when I was in this place? And I asked my interns what they needed to know. And so calculations were a huge thing. They also always said the math portion is really hard. So I would just crowdsource a little bit and ask your consumer and your customer. People are really willing to give you that information.
Yeah. Well, and I think that was so smart that, for you, the process of creating this course really came from that recognized need that you were seeing in these
Mhm.
people, these interns that you were working with every single day. And it's almost like the questions that they ask or the questions that you have yourself, like that kind of forms your curriculum, right? That
Mhm.
identifies what are the gaps? Like what do people not know? And I think that helps to create such an awesome framework for what is actually going to be really valuable.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so, how has the course changed over time? Has it at all, or is the material that you created at the beginning fairly similar to what you have now?
it has changed. So I have added a lot of modules based on students going through my course and saying, this was awesome. I'd really like to learn more about refeeding syndrome. And so I added a
Mm,
refeeding syndrome module. When we had really good data post-pandemic, I added a COVID-19 module summarizing some of that data and research. And a lot of that, even though we don't have ICUs full of COVID patients anymore, it's still really critical for our acute respiratory distress syndrome patients. So that's really relevant. I've also added a lot more in the medication section because my students have said, help me understand medications. I don't know what's relevant and what's not relevant.
mm. Okay, cool. And how did you actually go about, like, what was the process that you used to actually record your first lessons or your first modules?
Great question. So my husband's an engineer and he's very tech savvy, fortunately. So he helped me a bit on this end. This was not a skill set I had at all, but we did some Googling and some research. And I essentially have a capture program called OBS on my computer. And so
Hmm.
I make a PowerPoint in Google Slides and I basically do a screen capture of that and I record my voice just like you would on Zoom. And I've uploaded that to Vimeo. The tricky part for us was to figure out how to make sure my videos were hosted through Vimeo, but inside of my course. So you can't just Google and find my videos, and people can't just send links around because that's my private copywritten information. So I wanted to make sure it was all really safe and you had to have a paid login in order to access it.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. It's always interesting to hear because there's so many different ways you can create and record
Mm-hmm.
video modules. I feel like we do ours similarly in that we actually create the slides in Canva and then we just use
Mm.
Canva's built-in screen recorder because they have that now where you
Oh,
can, yeah, so you can just record yourself teaching through the slides and it'll show your face like in the corner of the slide.
that's
And then
awesome.
it's nice because then it all lives within Canva too. So you have that version
Mm-hmm.
on Canva. And then we'll do the same thing. We download it as an MP4 and then we upload it to Vimeo. So exact
Yep.
same process. Yeah. Yeah. So that's really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. So it's like you have to have the video can be uploaded anywhere. It's just you have
Hmm.
to figure out how to create the video. That's a component I think people get stuck on when it comes to the course piece.
Yeah, like you
Yeah.
said, there's a lot of great platforms that can make this really, really easy for you. You really just need a webcam.
Yeah, totally. So who is your typical client or customer for your courses now? Because I think you have more than one.
Yeah, so I sell nutrition support skills course. I typically have two versions, one for dietitians and one for interns. The intern
Mm,
course is a little less expensive. It doesn't count for CPEUs, and it has a certain module where I talk about advocating for the profession. That module is pretty different for the intern because it talks more about intern specific things and
mm,
looking forward to when you're a dietitian, whereas the advocating module for dietitians really talks about like what is our scope of practice? What does our code of ethics say? But essentially, that's really the same course. I also sell a crash course to internship programs. So an internship will consult me to teach on Zoom for 4 to 6 hours with their students. And usually it's workshop style. So we do a couple hours of Zoom, they do some work, case study style worksheets. And then the next day we come back on Zoom and do the answers together in real time.
mm. Oh, very cool. That's awesome. I love that. So I love hearing a situation where, like, for you, you've kind of owned this space of the nutrition support person. I feel
Mhm.
like you're the go-to person for nutrition support, which is so smart and such a testament to the idea of like really niching in on something and becoming kind
Yeah,
of like the subject matter expert on that topic. Because I think it opens up so many of those types of opportunities, like you're talking about with, having programs actually approach you to do these types of workshops because they know that you're the person that can help with that. So that's really
yeah,
cool. I love to hear that. That's awesome.
yeah.
I'm curious because I think that another thing that's really been a big or tends to be a big stumbling point for people who are thinking about creating online courses is the piece around pricing.
Hmm.
How did you decide what your prices were going to be for your course, and has that changed over time?
Great question. So this was a sticking point for me. I
Yeah.
really went into this not expecting that I was going to start a business. I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to market my course. I really just want to teach people, and that's my passion. And very quickly realized that this could be lucrative and a really good source of passive income because I don't have to
Hmm.
physically meet with most of my students. They buy my course and go through the content, and I answer questions as they go, and then it's done. So with that in mind, I don't think I'm a great example to follow, but I will share what I did. I think this is really common as you start your business. I was very unsure of how I should price my product. And I did sort of introductory pricing, which was like $300 for my course the very first time I started selling it. And I went up from there. And I had a couple people look through it and say, you really are undercharging. You need to charge more like 500. And so I did that, and I slowly went up over time. And this year I've actually ticked my pricing down a bit because so many of my students are saying that cost is a barrier, and it's just such a weird time. I do think things will normalize soon, but cost of living and just grocery prices and the cost
Hmm.
to exist in the world has gone up drastically and income has not. So I'm pretty generous with offering discounts to my students, but I've always said I'm going to price my product at what I feel like it's worth. And if a student can't afford it, they always can talk to me and we can find a price that works for them.
Yeah, I think everyone goes through that. Not everyone, but I think a lot of people go through that. And I notice it a lot within dietetics or within maybe more of the helping profession of like
Mm-hmm.
starting off really undercharging because there's sort of this like insecurity around charging for the true value.
Yeah.
Myself, I've gone through my own journey with that. And we're actually in the new year, we're like completely revamping our prices as
Mm.
well because we
Oh,
know that our price doesn't reflect our value either. We offer so much more value than what our price reflects. So same thing. We've always just sort of had the mentality of wanting to really get DSC in the hands of the most number of people, which has been a great strategy so far, but we're sort of in this like next evolution.
Yeah.
So I totally understand. I mean, it's a journey, right? And I think part of that is like your mindset having to shift into like the recognition of what you're offering and what is that equal and opposite exchange of value.
Yeah. And I mean, tell me if you feel like this is your experience.
Hmm.
You live in Canada, is that
Hmm.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, similar but different. I'm in Denver, Colorado. But here, I feel like it is so common to go and spend even $100 on dinner, on like a massage, for example, to fill up your car with gas, to go to the grocery store. And when I talk to students, especially students who have gone through the DI, I think there's this sense of I shouldn't have to pay for anything. I can just get things for free from my friends, which we all did it. I
Yeah.
definitely did that. But I think that is something I really struggled with, is because students don't want to pay for things. And especially when you come into your first job, you're paying off your student loans. You just went through this internship that you probably had to pay for. It is rough, but I do like in every other industry, you pay for resources. So I don't think that should be any different in our industry, just because historically many dietitians have been willing to give away their content for free. That's not what we
Yeah.
should keep doing, because it doesn't lift up other people. If I say, I'm just going to grab your stuff online, Chris, I'm not going to pay you, that's not
Yeah.
lifting up our profession.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I totally agree. And I think too, well, I agree. And I think about myself even graduating. And it's funny because, like, to your point, the idea around like investing in my own education outside of what was provided in school, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like, no, like I wouldn't pay out of pocket for that. And I think that for us, like we have a lot of students that are members that are like totally happy to do that, but we also have,
Mm-hmm.
there's also a number that don't. But I think for us, it's been also thinking about who really is our ideal client and who
Mm-hmm.
is our target dietitian. And I think it really is the dietitian that wants to better themselves, that really wants to like invest in their own skills and really build that confidence and feel better in the work that they're doing. And so for us, it's been, I think, more about, that dietitian that's been in practice for a couple years and
Mm-hmm.
focusing on that person instead of, and not to say that we're not focusing on the students, but like that's been sort of how I think our strategy has shifted to accommodate that piece, that kind of mindset shift that almost has to happen after you've worked
Mm-hmm.
for a couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And your customer
Yeah.
changes over time. I mean,
Yeah.
the internship has gone through so many huge changes in the last couple of years that even my internship clients are not the same. They don't need the same thing that they did 4 years ago.
Mm, interesting. And I'm wondering, have you thought about, or do you, versus instead of discounting your rates, do you offer like more extended payment plans as an option instead?
Sure,
Or
yeah,
you
I
also
don't
offer
have
that?
it. My website isn't built to accommodate that at the
Mm,
moment, but
okay.
I can always,
Yeah.
I can always offer that type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, cool. That's awesome. Okay, let's talk about marketing. I would love to know, what has marketing been like for you? How do you market yourself right now? Let's start off with that.
So I have an Instagram page which cost me $0 and 0 cents a month. And it's been super effective. So I started off with just an Instagram page. I have explored a lot of options for marketing, and my philosophy from the very beginning was I want to pay nothing for marketing and just see what happens. And again, I'm not sure I would encourage that. That was just where I was that point in time. And I started a business during the pandemic, and so I had no idea what was going to happen. I didn't pay anything for marketing for Instagram for about a year and a half. Now I run a couple ads, targeted ads on Instagram, which I find to be quite effective and very low cost.
Hmm.
I've been recommended by several people to do Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, a variety of social media channels. And I've just really decided I don't have the bandwidth to do that. I want to really protect my bandwidth. And part of the reason why I have multiple jobs is so I can have good work-life balance. And if I every time have to be posting on 6 different channels when I'm on vacation, I just can't maintain that kind of atmosphere. And so I have been a little old school in my marketing approach. I just refuse to do something like TikTok or even YouTube. Nothing against those platforms. I'm not going to be dancing and videos every day. Like, that's just not me. And I'm going to be honest, like, I felt a lot of pressure to do that. And at various times in my business, I thought, I think I just need to do this and jump in with 2 feet because everybody's doing it. And I will just want to normalize it. Like, people marketed before TikTok and you can market without it. It's okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So important. I want to ask you about your Instagram ads because that's
Mhm.
really, I'm fascinated by that. But so do you find that most of your customers then do find you through Instagram?
Almost all of my customers find me on Instagram.
Cool.
I've been working on SEO the last couple years, and I've gotten a couple people just from Google searches, which is a very
Yeah.
definitely an area I need to explore more, but almost everybody comes through Instagram. Yeah.
So cool. So, okay, I want to selfishly ask you a question about
Mhm.
ads because I've explored Facebook or Instagram ads many
Mhm.
times, and I've always struggled with the audience, not like the dietitian audience not being big enough and knowing whether,
Mhm.
because I feel like on Facebook ads, like you have to have a certain size of audience in order to be able to target people within yours. And I've always thought that the dietitian
Mm.
audience was not big enough. And I don't know, that sounds like it has not been your experience.
Yeah, so I mean, I know it's changed a bit because I think the ads are through Facebook, but they're on Instagram. When I started
Exactly.
doing
Yeah.
Instagram
Yeah.
ads, it was just an Instagram ad.
Okay.
And now they've changed it a bit, but I have two audiences, and there was a dietitian audience. I think perhaps one that I created, or maybe one that Instagram just offered. But you can also make your own. And so I tailor ads to people who follow the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics and
Yeah.
Aspen
Okay.
and some of those like big platforms on Instagram. I send
Gotcha.
ads to those people because I mean, anybody could be following any dietitian page who's not a dietitian or doesn't want to be a dietitian. You never know. But
Yeah.
I'm trying to target people who follow these dietitian specific pages. Some of those really big ones, like That Dietitian Life and All Access Dietetics, and
Yeah.
like all of those kind of you know that dietitians primarily are following those pages.
For sure. Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. Have you played around at all with like the copy that you use on your graphics and like what is effective versus not effective for an ad? Because I know that there's some
Hmm.
that can be different than what performs well organically.
Yes, I've not done a ton of research into that. I've done more research into hashtags, frankly, to
Oh,
look at
cool.
like
Okay.
I have the same hashtags that I generally use for every post.
Yeah.
And those are all in my boosted posts. And there's like that classic, you do some really big hashtags that capture a big market and then some that are really tailored to your product. I've been a bit lazy with this lately, so I'm sure I could do a much more a deeper dive into how my ads are performing, but I find them to be so affordable. It costs
Yeah.
$5 a day to do an ad on Instagram. You can run it for a
Mm,
week. So whenever I have a sale or if I launch something new, I usually make a reel and then I boost that reel. And I mean, Instagram has a vested interest in saying, oh, look, 6,000 people saw this. So who knows how
right.
true that is because it's them getting the money, but I do find I get a lot of follows every day
Mm.
when I have an ad going live. So it does seem to be working.
Okay, very cool. And I'm so glad that you talked about this because I think so. I've explored ads quite a bit, and
Mm-hmm.
I've taken a course in ads in
Mm-hmm.
Facebook, Instagram ads, but I've always sort of had that. And I think it's probably because the people who typically tend to educate on ads are not necessarily people that are super familiar with small niches,
Mm-hmm.
which realistically, like that is what we are in. So I think I've always struggled with when they give us, training on like this is how big the audience should be. I'm always like, okay, well, mine's not.
Mm-hmm.
So is this just going to be wasting my money? And then I kind of get in my head about it and I'm like, well, maybe it's not worth going down that route. So I really haven't explored it because that's been the thing that's been stopping me. But I love to hear from somebody who's doing it and has actually found that, yeah, you can get away with the $5 a day Instagram ads. And, even if it's just audience building, I think there's so much
Yeah.
value in that. So thank you for sharing that. That was just such a nice little
Okay.
tidbit for me. So I really appreciate that. Very cool. What
Yeah,
do you
I
feel
felt,
like? Oh, yeah,
oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No,
I
no, you
felt that
go.
I felt that as well. What you said about some courses and some content that's like, oh, I'll help you with your Instagram business.
Yeah.
It's not as relevant to me because my business is so small. And my
Yeah.
niche is so small. I mean, I'm not just
Yeah.
talking like dietetic interns and dietitians, but those who want to practice clinical, who
Hmm.
want to be a nutrition support
It's like
dietitian
a
is
niche within
very
a niche
small.
within a niche,
Yes,
which is
piece of pie.
awesome. Yeah.
So some of those, I would just be hesitant if you're exploring things for the listeners, if you're exploring big media accounts or take like a media course that's like, oh, product marketing, or I'm selling a book, or something that's like a huge audience, even some SEO stuff. I've looked into SEO blogs and I've taken an SEO course, and it's not very helpful because I need such targeted SEO work. And I think a lot of that you can do for free if you can find a niche on Instagram. And this is part of the reason why I didn't pursue TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, like all of these other platforms at once, because I don't want to cast an enormous net. I kind
Yeah.
of want to find like this group of people and have word of mouth, which is where I get a lot of my referrals. Somebody takes my course and tells a friend at the hospital that they work at, you should buy Sara's course. And then it snowballs from there. So some of that marketing help or courses, not to discredit them at all, but it may not be helpful for your specific dietitian business.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I totally agree. I do think, not to, and I'm not wanting to, give you any unsolicited advice, but I think YouTube, like if you were going to explore another channel, if you have more
Mhm.
bandwidth at some point, like just because we have found quite a bit of, we just started our YouTube channel like 2 months ago. So we were like
Okay.
so late to the game. And I've kind of always been like,
Mhm.
oh, maybe we should do that. Maybe whatever. It's always felt like something that would take a lot of time. But I think YouTube really works for something that is, again, hyper niche, because a lot of people go to YouTube looking for this type of, hyper niche topics. And so we have a YouTube video on like PES statements.
Mhm.
That is just like, how do you write a PES statement? And it brings
Okay.
us traffic constantly. And we just created one video, and it's
That's
just like a
awesome.
set it and forget it. So I don't know, just throwing that out there. I really think you could do quite well on YouTube just with a couple of like really focused videos.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So is your
Yeah.
approach kind of, I'm going to go give away a little tiny freebie on YouTube and then send people to my website to buy my full course?
It's more, yes, but we typically, I would say more so our strategy is, so we have blog content. So we have
Hmm.
a PES statement, how to write PES statements blog post. And we basically just took that, turned it into a YouTube video.
Hmm.
And the call to action is that we talk about some of our other freebies. So we have a
Okay.
freebie, which is like 5 client handouts for free. We have a PS statement cheat sheet that is a freebie. So we'll talk about those freebies to try and direct people to our email list. And then once they're on our
Cool.
email list, then we can nurture from there into actually becoming a DSC member. But
Okay.
that's typically the process that we follow. Because really, I mean, for us, like, PES statements, it's sort of an entry topic that
Hmm.
we don't really like. That's, pretty high level compared
Hmm.
to what we actually provide in the membership, which is so much
Yeah.
more breadth and depth and variety. So, yeah,
Cool.
that's been our strategy that's worked quite well.
So the YouTube is more brand building, like this is the
Yeah.
company I want to follow for this content, etc.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. Totally.
That's great advice.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah. Oh my God. No problem. For
Mhm.
sure. Well, just because you gave me such a great little tip with Facebook there or
Mhm.
Instagram ads, what do you feel like has not worked for you when it comes to marketing? If you've tried anything and you've been like, yeah, that was a bit of a flop.
So I initially started with a business LinkedIn page and a business Facebook page. And I kind of felt like LinkedIn is really popular. Like I think it kind of slumped a bit, but it's still pretty hot, I think. Or maybe
Hmm.
that's just me being old school. But I always felt like LinkedIn was so professional and Facebook was really more for personal stuff. So I kind of wanted to target both groups. And I really just spread myself too thinly. I wasn't good at either of them. I lightly explored starting a group on Facebook where people could ask questions and I could answer, but I didn't have a good base of people that I like sent to the group. You kind of need like a group of newsletter subscribers or Instagram
Yeah.
followers, and then like put them in this group on Facebook. Just expecting people to find me on Facebook or find my website and follow this random Facebook group just did not work for me.
Mm, yeah. That's so good to know. So, so good to know. Yeah, we've kind of had the same experience with like a Facebook page and I've
Mhm.
also wondered, should we have a free Facebook group? Because it seems like that's something a
Mhm.
lot of people do that works really well for them. But same thing, we've kind of decided against that for any
Yeah.
number of reasons. But, it's part of just testing and learning, right?
Yeah.
Like marketing is that it's just an experiment.
One thing that I do think has been fairly successful for other small business owners I've talked to, and specifically dietitian small business owners who are making courses and content, some type of like Slack or I don't know,
Mm,
chat group. There's a bunch of different platforms you could use, but think about all the private practice dietitians who are doing their own thing, don't really have coworkers or colleagues to like bounce ideas off of. And so I do think that idea of like, let's put all of these people into like a DSC Slack group so you can have like
mhm.
coworkers and chat and share resources. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, I know. And I've thought about that too because so within our team, we started using Slack 2 years ago, I would say. Before that, we were just like emailing each other back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And Slack was such a game changer in terms of communication, right? It's like the ease of being able to just chat back and forth with people versus posting on a forum or whatever. We have obviously our internal community within Dietitian Success Center, but I have thought about that is like, how do we make this even easier and even more accessible and top of mind for people to chat? Yeah,
Totally.
so
Yeah.
true. I know. Yeah, I love that. Such a cool idea. Okay, what is next for you and your business? What are you dreaming about as the next
Mm.
version or the next phase?
It's interesting you asked that because I've explored a lot of different things recently and within the last week have finally decided what to do. So
Cool.
this is very good timing. I've looked at like making a introductory MNT course because sometimes students will take my course and be like, it's too much. I need like a clinical review of disease states
Okay.
and like nutrient deficiencies before I jump in. And I've really realized there are so many great companies out there that do that. And you can buy another dietitian's course. And I really am not here to compete with them. Like, if there's something great that exists in the world, I'm not going to try to make a product that's like half as great. How to sell that. So I'm going to let those dietitians do what they really are great at, which is a lot of the same dietitians who do prep for the RD exam do like MNT prep, those types of things. I also thought about doing some sort of like business empowerment negotiation type thing, but there's some awesome accounts like the Dietitian Money Conference who
Mhm.
does a lot of that content and is doing an amazing job at it. So my next thing is the CNSC exam.
Mm.
I just retook my 5-year certification, so I've taken the exam twice, and I have a 50-page study guide. And there are a few CNSC study guides out there. I've not looked at any of them in great detail, but this seems to be a huge opportunity. People are dying for like a really good, super comprehensive break down the exam for me and tell me what I need to memorize. And that's exactly what I'm going to provide. I have every single group and subgroup that's on that exam, and I have information about everything you're going to need to know for the CNSC.
Mm. Wow. So cool. So are you going to turn that into a course or is it going to be more of like a physical study guide or a
I think
document?
it'll be a physical study guide. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've thought about
love
doing a
that.
course, but so much of that content is like you just got to memorize it.
Yeah.
And if you want to listen to me record it, like that's fine. Maybe I'll do an audio version, but it's sort of like the RD exam. Like
Yeah.
you need to know the content, you need to have it visually written out. And if the student is more, okay, I need to write everything down, they can take notes and, handwrite their notes. If they're like a note typer, they can type their own notes off my study guide. They can make their own flashcards. They can use it however they need to use it. It'll
Hmm.
basically just be like a huge workbook and you
Cool.
can sort of go through it and check things off as you commit it to memory, which that exam is a beast. So
Yeah.
it's gonna be process.
Very cool. When do you think that's going to be available?
I'm hoping to have pre-sales at the end of this year, like maybe in December, and start
Cool.
selling it early 2025 because usually students will start studying in January for the spring exam and then they'll study over the summer for the fall exam. So you could use my study guide for spring and fall 2025 CNSC.
Cool. Okay, well, tell
Yeah,
us when that is available and we will absolutely
absolutely.
help you spread the word for sure. That's really
Thank
cool.
you.
So, where can the audience find out more about you and what you offer and what you sell and all of that great stuff?
I'm on Instagram, edge-clinical. And I also have a website, edge-clinical.com. My contact information, you can contact me directly through Instagram, and we can always email. Or something I've been doing a lot lately is just talking to students on the phone, just scheduling a phone call. Because a lot of students are starting out in their career, or maybe have worked in clinical for a few years and want some advice. How do I become a nutrition support dietitian? What's next for me? What do wages look like? All of that information I'm happy to share with a phone call.
Oh, very cool. That's awesome. I will link to all of that in the
Yeah,
description of this episode, but it was so good to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining me on the podcast, and thanks for being so open about your experience. It's going to be so helpful to so many dietitians.
good. I'm glad. Thanks, Krista.
Okay, thanks, Sara.